From the Oklahoman newsroom, this is an OSU update. I'm Penny Carlson. Oklahoma State goes to Morgantown and comes away with a huge overtime victory, 33-26. They did so without Ryan Simmons. His first game missing since that knee injury has left him out for the rest of the year. Kyle Fredrickson joins us on the phone. And Kyle, he was obviously a longtime mainstay in the starting lineup. To be without him was really different for the Cowboys. But you had a chance to talk to Simmons on Sunday, only 24 hours after that first game without him. What did he have to say to you about watching that game and not being a part of it for the first time in such a long time?
Well, you mentioned just how long it had been. We're talking about a guy who'd made 31 consecutive starts. So, of course it was strange, having to watch at home. He stayed in Stillwater, and he said he was by himself in his apartment watching as the game played out. But, he was in very good spirits, and I think a lot of that is a reflection of his maturity and his leadership role in this team, being a guy who doesn't get too high or too low, no matter the situation. That's what Simmons was known for, in his playing days, and it's something that he's certainly showcased now. So, in a few days he'll have surgery, and he could be out anywhere from 3 to 5 months. But, according to him, his plans haven't changed. He wants to, pursue a career as potentially a professional player. And for him, this is just kind of another setback. But, it was kind of interesting hearing him talk about what it was like watching it. He was just like his teammates were after the game, jumping around and screaming. So, he was certainly in a better mood following that victory as his team moved to 6-0, albeit without him.
Yeah, you and I were in the post-game press conferences and opportunities after that game on Saturday night to talk to players and coaches about that. And you mentioned that it was strange for Simmons to not be there, but it was also strange for those guys that are so used to him being around. Glenn Spencer, I think you and I agreed afterwards that there was a point when he was talking about Simmons, I thought we were going to get waterworks. Glenn Spencer nearly tearing up about not having Ryan Simmons there. So clearly he leaves a void, but he's still around. What role can he realistically play for this team moving forward?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a situation where he can't travel with the team and be with them on game days, but he's still around. During practices he'll be on the sideline, serving as another voice for them and kind of teaching up this very talented but still very young defense in a lot of different positions. So really, it's more of just him showing face, and that's what he told me in that story I wrote. He wanted to make sure that these guys knew that this wasn't something that really is affecting him. This is just a setback that anyone could face, and when you're faced with something like that on a football team, whether it be in the game or outside of the game, it's the next man up mentality, and then you've got to make it work. And there's no doubt that Simmons has a lot of respect and a lot of trust in his replacement on the defense, sophomore Chad Whitener, with another great game against the West Virginia. So, in his eyes, this is just something that could happen to anybody. And it's a situation where a young defense kind of has to figure it out and make it work. But, with that being said, like you mentioned, it's an emotional loss for this team. The slogan this past week was Ride for 52, which is Simmons' jersey number. His teammates obviously, stepping up and kind of playing this season in honor of him now. So you figure that adds a little bit of motivation as the Cowboys, enter November in a month or so, facing some pretty high-powered offenses.
Lastly, Kyle, I'm mindful of the fact that a year ago at this time, if Ryan Simmons suffers a similar injury with the depth that they had at linebacker, things would have really been thrown into disarray. Their depth at linebacker was so limited a year ago. And now here they are, obviously, affected by the Simmons injury, and yet you mentioned Chad Whitener stepping in and playing really well on Saturday night. They've got guys like Devontae Averett who can play in reserve roles, but play quite a bit and play pretty well. That linebacker depth, if there's a silver lining, it's that it's way better now than it was even a year ago.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I mean, a knock on wood for Chad Whitener, but let's say he gets hurt. The Cowboys could really roll right along. You mentioned Averett. They've got Chris Catlin, another guy who could step in. Josh Maben is another young guy they really like, who could also, move up into that role. They could shift a guy like Seth Jacobs to the middle if they had to. So obviously, they don't want to lose Ryan Simmons, especially in terms of his leadership. But this doesn't seem like the type of injury that would derail the season, and a year ago, that certainly might be the case, just considering that lack of depth. So, They miss having him out there. He's still going to be an important voice in this program. Glenn Spencer said as much in the post-game interview we had with him. But the Cowboys will roll right along. And, from what we've seen from Chad Whitener, he certainly is up to the task of replacing a guy who left some pretty big shoes as the Cowboys move ahead.
And let's remember, too, that the Cowboys went that first game without Simmons, playing 98 snaps against the West Virginia offense. So a ton of snaps that they had to go up against. But they obviously did well enough to leave Morgantown with a victory, and not everybody can say that. Hey, be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.